Heart of Darkness. The author of the story is Joseph Conrad, who was actually Józef Korzeniowski. Its first publication took place in 1899. Part 1. 5 men are sailing on the Thames aboard the ship, Nelly. One of them is an unnamed narrator who recounts the words of the second, a sailor named Charlie Marlow. The latter, while waiting for the tide, begins to tell of his journey to Africa during the times of colonial conquest. Since childhood, Charlie had been interested in maps. They were his hobby. He could spend hours analyzing the contours of continents. He was intrigued by the largest river in Africa, the Congo, which in its shape reminded him of a snake. When he learned of a trading company operating there, he decided to apply for a job as a captain on one of its steamboats. Using his aunt's influence, Charlie secured the position. The process of preparing for the African expedition felt somewhat strange and ominous to Charlie. The contract resembled an initiation into a conspiracy. The doctor who examined him before departure asked Marlow to observe the changes in the mental state of the people staying there. Finally, he said goodbye to his aunt and set sail. Marlow explains to the gathered men that, in his opinion, women live in illusions and thoughtlessly believe what is written in the newspapers. For example, that the West is bringing civilization to the dark African peoples. His aunt treated him as an emissary of light. Marlow was irritated by such an attitude. The sailor reveals that before the journey itself, he felt fear, as if he were heading into the heart of darkness. He traveled to Africa aboard a French steamer. As it sailed along the shores of the black and mysterious jungle, the sailor had the impression that they were standing still. The jungle looked the same day after day. After 30 days of travel, the ship reached one of the company's stations. It was there that he first saw how the black people working on the construction of the railway line were treated. They were gaunt and exhausted. An armed guard watched over them. Marlow saw many who died from overwork, including a young boy to whom, just before his death, Charlie gave a piece of dry bread. In the settlement, Marlow met the company's accountant, who was such an elegantly dressed man that he looked like someone from another world against the backdrop of the black slaves. It was from him that Marlow learned about a certain Kurtz, a trader holding the largest share of the profits from the ivory trade. The sailor spent the next 10 days mostly in the bookkeeper's hut. When the caravan arrived, he set out with it on a long journey on foot to the central station, which was managed by the company's director. Marlow reached it after 15 days of marching. He met the director and wondered about his secret, as he was a merchant without education, and the station he managed was in a deplorable state. People felt unease toward him, which was an asset for him. Furthermore, he was resistant to the harsh African conditions. Marlow suspects, however, that there was simply nothing inside this man. The director himself once said, "The men who come out here should have no entrails." In a conversation with Marlow, the director mentions Kurtz and states that he is his best agent and an exceptional man. He also adds that there are rumors that Kurtz is ill. Marlow was given 3 months to repair the steamer, which was at the bottom of the river but had been recovered. He had the opportunity to observe the relations prevailing in the colony and noted with sadness that the white men were possessed by greed. They thought only of how to increase their shares in the ivory trade profits. For this purpose, they schemed and conspired. The shed of a foolish greed pervaded it all like a whiff of a corpse. Marlow witnessed the flogging of one of the black men, who was accused of setting fire to a thatched hut. Furthermore, he again heard about Kurtz that he is an exceptional man. He is an emissary of pity and science and progress and devil knows what else. Marlow wanted more and more to meet this Kurtz and see what he was really like. Part 2. Charlie, lying on the deck of the steamer, overheard a conversation in which the station manager and his uncle, the leader of a trading expedition, discussed Kurtz's influence in the firm. They were terrified that one person could lead everyone by the nose. Marlow also hears fragments of sentences about another individual in the firm who threatens their interests, which makes the speakers want to get rid of him, claiming that the strongest wins, and in Africa, they are immune to punishment anyway. Anything can be done in this country. No one here, you understand, here can endanger your position. And why? Because you stand the climate. You outlast them all. Marlow and his companions set out on the journey to Kurtz's station. the trip was grueling and the steamer often ran aground. Therefore, the crew was increased by several strong black men, cannibals who helped with the work. Charlie does not think, like the others, that they are inhuman. He watches their work with admiration, especially that of the firemen. During a stop, the travelers find a seamanship book, and with it a strange message saying they should hurry, but they still sailed cautiously. Unfortunately, during the journey, they were attacked by natives. The helmsman died. Marlow wondered if the supposedly ill Kurtz would still be alive when they reached him. He imagines him as a talented man, bringing the torch of civilization and progress to the black people. Marlow continued his story and announced to those gathered that Kurtz, already on site deep in the jungle, had prepared a report for the Society for the Suppression of Savage Customs. Under the guise of noble goals lay the true one, added later in madness, boiling down to the extermination of the native population. Marlow finally reached the destination, where they were greeted by a Russian who was caring for the sick Kurtz, of whom he said, "You don't talk with that man, you listen to him. This man has enlarged my mind." Part 3. Marlow learned that Kurtz had created his own army formed of black men. He also saw palisades with the heads of black people impaled on them. The young Russian, fascinated by Kurtz, explained to the sailor that these were the heads of rebels. Marlow was astonished by how much power Kurtz had, and that he was treated like a god here. Finally, he saw the person who had intrigued him so much. Kurtz was carried in on a stretcher, and despite being exhausted by illness, spoke with a powerful voice to those gathered. He still held power over the people. Later, Kurtz was placed on the ship in one of the small cabins, and his care was entrusted to Marlow. When they set sail, Charlie spotted a beautiful black woman on the shore who was Kurtz's mistress. Sadness was visible on her face. Charlie learned that it was Kurtz who had ordered the attack on their ship earlier. He wanted to delay its arrival this way and gain time to finish his plans regarding the ivory collection. Even now, in a grave condition during the journey home, he spun visions of returning to the jungle. Kurtz felt he was dying, so he handed Charlie all the documents and photographs. A few days later, Kurtz died, with a whisper that was no louder than a breath. The horror. The horror. For Charlie, Kurtz was someone who ultimately won. It was an affirmation, a moral victory paid for by innumerable defeats, by abominable terrors, by abominable satisfactions, but it was a victory. Marlow explained that this was precisely why he stayed with him until the end. When he reached Brussels, he gave part of the documents to the company owners and part to journalists. He also handed over the report prepared by the deceased, but earlier Marlow had torn off the postscript in which Kurtz stated that the savage natives should be exterminated. Marlow also spoke with Kurtz's cousin and learned from him that the deceased had great musical talent. However, in other conversations, he heard that Kurtz could have been a great politician or a painter. Charlie also met with Kurtz's intended, to whom he handed his private letters. The sailor did not disabuse the girl of her mistaken belief in the greatness and uniqueness of her fiancé. When the girl asked him about her beloved's last moments, Marlow lied that the last thing he said before dying was her name. Marlow explains why he hid the truth with these words. It would have been too dark altogether.